Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little video that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video once again by that of DontaesBoxingNation, who, once again, the reason why I like to commentate on a lot of his videos is a lot of the times because even though I think DontaesBoxingNation can kind of state some things that I think may be relevant, or I think overall that, they might have a little bit of truth to them. A lot of the times he very clearly has an agenda or some sort of propaganda or a narrative afoot when it comes down to it. So I kind of like to talk about that myself because if you watch Dante's Boxing Nation's videos, you're going to have a completely different narrative or overall, mindset afoot, especially if you don't know that much about boxing or if you really don't know what's going on. Now, once again, that's not me stating that I disagree with everything that Dante or that new media has to say, but a lot of their narratives, for those of us that truly know boxing, we all know what they're truly involved with. They're involved in a very big racial agenda, usually. It just is what it is. But anyways, in this most recent, occurrence of events, Floyd Mayweather Jr., who, of course, in my view, was the greatest fighter of his generation, and of course many would debate, rightfully so in my view, as debatably the greatest fighter of all time. Floyd Mayweather Jr. recently stated that Terrence Bud Crawford, that if he really wants to go up and fight Canelo Alvarez so badly, that he should go up to 168 pounds, and that he should fight that at David Benavidez and see who really overall gets that fight. And not only did Floyd Mayweather Jr. apparently say that, but he also stated that Canelo has earned the right to fight anybody that he wants, and that he pretty much overall was in a similar position to me in my career. Apparently, that's what he recently stated, at least according to that of Dante's Boxing Nation. But Dante, he of course overall is going to state a multitude of things. We all know that the LDBC and new media, that they're very big fans of Floyd Mayweather Jr., and that they're very big haters of Canelo Alvarez. It just is what it is, And not only is this going to be an opportunity for me to kind of critique once again Dante's commentary, but it's also going to give me a little bit of an opportunity to talk about the Terrence Bud Crawford and Canelo situation, and also to compare a little bit the careers of Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Canelo Alvarez, because both Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Canelo Alvarez, they're both all-time great fighters. Now, depending on the side that you listen to, you're going to get certain people, Canelo Alvarez fans, that state that, Floyd was a cherry picker and that he was a ducker. And then you're going to get Floyd Mayweather Jr. fans that say that Canelo Alvarez was a cherry picker and a ducker and all that stuff. The truth is about both fighters is that, they had their, individual unique skill set. I think that both have a great and all-time great resume. I think that they're both all-time great fighters when it comes down to it. And I just thought that I would talk about that because if you watch the LDBC and new media, they'll basically tell you that Floyd Mayweather Jr. is an all-time great fighter, and then fighters like, Canelo Alvarez and Tyson Fury and Usyk and Inoue and certain guys like that, that they were just complete hype. Or Gennady Golovkin. Basically, any fighter, let's be real, that's not a black American fighter. They have to try to tear it down. And then, of course, if you watch old media or certain sites or channels that, that are kind of associated with them, they pretty much do it in reverse. They may, kind of go a little bit more against black fighters, and then they might try to prop up guys like Canelo or Tyson Fury a little bit more. So the truth is somewhat in the middle, but they're both a little bit too biased, in my view, to really be commentating in that of a logical view. And that's kind of where I come in because I don't really have a horse in any of these races. All I'm here to do is really to comment my perspective. But anyways, let's get straight into it. Let's see what Floyd Mayweather Jr. had to say about the Terrence Bud Crawford situation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Floyd Mayweather came out, did this recent interview where he said Terrence Crawford and David Benavidez, they need to fight each other. He said if Crawford wants to go to 168 and fight Canelo Alvarez so bad, and Benavidez wants to fight Canelo Alvarez so bad, they should fight against each other. And then he also said Canelo, just like me, he can fight whoever he wants. He's earned the right to fight whoever he wants. There's so much to unpack right now, I don't even know where to start.
And you can hear that Dante's Boxing Nation is very disappointed. Almost like how a father is disappointed in their son, but he's disappointed in his idol, Floyd Mayweather Jr. He's very disappointed because now this most recent comments, it really affects overall the Terrence Bud Crawford narrative and also the Canelo Alvarez narrative. And don't get me wrong, Canelo Alvarez is going to have to eventually at least try to get in the ring with David Benavidez, or he's going to get a certain amount of criticism, and it's very much going to be warranted. Now, we all know that there's been a little bit of troubles with the deal behind the scenes. Is it Canelo? Is it David Benavidez? Is it maybe both of them? Who knows? There's been a couple of things from both sides to where I could say that they're a little bit fishy. We all know what Dante's Boxing Nation and new media is going to say. We all know they're going to go against Canelo Alvarez because their main objective is to make sure that Canelo is not remembered as an all-time great fighter. And that's why every time they have to talk about Canelo, they say that he's a good Mexican fighter and not a great one, and that, he's not even better than Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera, even though Canelo has pretty much won all of his big fights in his career and beaten some top 10 pound-for-pound fighters, and is a four-weight division champion, and Barrera and Morales have not accomplished that, nor won the majority of the bigger fights in their career, nor as skilled as Canelo Alvarez, but it is what it is. But they have to try to push that narrative because they know that if someone like Canelo or an Inoue or a Fury or a Usyk, that if those guys are remembered as the greatest of their generation, that they're going to be remembered debatably overall as up there with Roy Jones, Floyd Mayweather, Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, debatably as some of the greatest of all time, and debatably overtaking whoever their idol may be. And that's not me stating overall that I would necessarily agree with that, but that's the reason why every time there's a fighter that looks like Canelo or Inoue or a non-black American fighter, usually when it comes down to it, or just a non-black fighter really in general, new media and the LDBC has to try to do damage control and tear them down immediately. That's why when Vasily Lomachenko or Canelo or Inoue was debated as the number one pound-for-pound fighter, they seen it as very disrespectful. But if you were to debate Devin Haney right now, or Gervonta Tank Davis, or Shakur Stevenson, they wouldn't really have as big of a problem with it. Once again, because all their ideologies and all their narratives are completely racially propagandic based. It just is what it is.
First of all, when Floyd was able to fight whoever he wanted, he fought the best. He fought Manny Pacquiao at age 38. Manny Pacquiao was considered pound for pound number 2, one of the best fighters in the world. That's like Terrence Crawford fighting Errol Spence, because Errol Spence at the time on
Floyd Mayweather Jr. did fight Manny Pacquiao when he was 38 years old, but Manny Pacquiao also was 36 or 37 years old when he fought Floyd Mayweather Jr. Now, is that me making an excuse for Manny Pacquiao why he ended up losing for that fight? Absolutely not. But Dante will try to tell you this bullshit about how Floyd was just this grandpa and how he clearly was a diminished version of himself when he fought Pacquiao and Canelo Alvarez. And that's just not the case. Now, if you want to state that he was older in his career, maybe a bit slower, you can maybe state that. But when Floyd fought Canelo Alvarez, he pretty much was at the peak and still the prime of his career, even at 36 years old. You can still be at the peak and the prime of your career, even in a little bit older of age. Bernard Hopkins really did not hit his peak until his late 30s, early 40s. That's why whenever I criticize Bernard Hopkins, when it comes down to it, people, they always take a look at me, with a little bit of a side eye or a side glance, and they say, how could you say that? He was 40-something years old, right? But that was when Bernard Hopkins was at the best point in time in his career. He wasn't really as relevant in his early 30s when it came down to it. It wasn't really in his mid-30s until he really started to become really relevant, at least within that of the middleweight division, and being debated as debatably one of the top 5 to top 3, debatably the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter. But, we'll talk about Bernard Hopkins another time because, like I said, in my view, he's a bit overrated. I thought that he lost a little bit too many big fights in his career, especially against guys that really weren't naturally his own size. I always thought that he was a bit of a weight bully, and a size guy at 160, just my personal opinion, but it is what it is. Anyways, but when it comes down to it, Floyd Mayweather Jr. was a great champion, and he did fight the best of his era. Not me stating necessarily that every single time he fought a guy that they had not lost previously, or that maybe they were at the absolute peak of their career, but a lot of the times when he fought them, they were coming off of an amazing performance or a great win. Miguel Cotto with his 3-fight, win streak. The last one being the, revenge match over Antonio Margarito. When it comes down to, Shane Mosley after he whooped Antonio Margarito's ass. Marcos Maidana after he beat Adrian Broner. Pacquiao after he defeated, a slew of opponents, and a couple of others. He fought the majority of those guys pretty much at the best point in time in their career. And Canelo Alvarez, no matter what Dante tries to tell you, Canelo Alvarez has fought the majority of his opponents at the best point in time in their career. Now, you can maybe argue that they didn't look quite as dominant as when Floyd fought his fighters. When it came down to, you can maybe argue that, but when Canelo fought Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant and Callum Smith, and when he fought Lara and Danny Jacobs and Golovkin and even Sergey Kovalev and a few others, Miguel Cotto, Jermell Charlo, those guys were pretty much at the best point in time in their career. Now, Sergey Kovalev, for example, he was a little bit more wore down when it came down to it, but he still was an A-grade level champion. Like, these guys will legitimately try to convince you that Gervonta Tank Davis is fighting legit A-grade level elite Latino guys. These Latino midgets at 135, and at 130, like Isaac Pitbull Cruz, when they're very usually one-dimensional fighters when it comes down to it. And a lot of the times they've never even been champions. But, Canelo's not fighting elite fighters, overall by fighting Billy Joe Saunders, and Sergey Kovalev was completely done, even though he had just came off of 2 dominant wins in the light heavyweight division, one over the undefeated Anthony Yard, who in Dante's opinion was a very talented fighter. He'll even still say that to this day. And overall, a complete domination in the rematch against Eleider Alvarez. But I'm supposed to believe that Sergey Kovalev was completely done in his career. Now, you can state that Sergey Kovalev was not quite the same. That's fair to say. But that fight overall would kind of be similar to like when Floyd fought Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar had already been stopped a couple times in his career, and he had already been beaten a multitude of times. But he still was a champion. And on top of that, he still was probably a good, decent A-grade level fighter. So don't let Dante fool you. It is what it is. He has damage control to do on Canelo Alvarez until he needs to use him to tear down somebody, like when he needed to tear down Gennady Triple G Golovkin.
A lot of pound-for-pound list was ranked number 2 as the best fighter in the world. At 36, Floyd Mayweather, he fought Canelo Alvarez, who almost outweighed him by 20 pounds, who was about 13 or 14 years younger than him. He completely dominated him. That was his version of David Benavidez. But
it absolutely was. I give Floyd Mayweather Jr. a lot of credit for that fight. Now, that being said, because the narrative kind of goes both ways. The Canelo Alvarez fans, they kind of state that Canelo would completely whoop Floyd's ass today and that, it wouldn't even be close today. I don't really agree with that. And then, of course, we all know what new media, the pro-black cult, is going to say. They're going to say, oh, Floyd whooped him when he was completely old and not even the same fighter. That's not true. Floyd beat him when he was still the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world and still was clearly pretty much at the mountaintop and pretty much at the peak of his career. If he wasn't at the peak of his career, he was very, very close. And to be fair to Canelo Alvarez, in terms of championship-level experience, he had not really been there to the mountaintop as many times as that of Floyd Mayweather Jr. He was not at his absolute peak. Now, he was in his prime, but he would not really overall be at the quote-unquote mountaintop yet in his career. That would occur when Canelo would fight Gennady Golovkin, especially in the rematch, and then Danny Jacobs and Caleb Plant. That was when Canelo Alvarez was really at his peak. I think that his peak started when he beat Miguel Cotto. I think that that's really when his peak started. Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s peak probably started when he defeated Diego Corrales, somewhere around there. And then, it probably ended maybe around the first, second Maidana fight, somewhere around there. Maybe if you want to state that. But even then, you could debate that he was somewhat at his peak. Although you could see that he was still a little bit slower. But against Canelo, no, he still was a great fighter.
Bigger, stronger, younger, undefeated fighter. Floyd Mayweather has beat more fighters that were currently on the top 10 pound-for-pound list than any other fighter. When Floyd...
That certainly is true, and that's why Floyd Mayweather Jr., in many people's opinions, and rightfully so, is the greatest fighter of all time. I have no problem with that, because when he defeated Shane Mosley, Shane would have been on the top 10 pound-for-pound list. When he whooped that one, Mexican statue's ass, Antonio Margarito, who didn't have really much out of the way in terms of power and a chin when it came down to it, once those hand wraps got discovered. When it came down to, he ended up whooping his ass. I'm not sure if Miguel Cotto would have been top 10 pound-for-pound or not when Floyd defeated him, but he would have been pretty close. He definitely defeated Pacquiao and Diego Corrales when they would have been top 10 pound-for-pound. Probably Canelo Alvarez as well, just in the bottom 5 probably. And there's probably a couple of other fighters that maybe I'm not thinking of. I don't think that Marcos Maidana would have been there. Ricky Hatton probably was, though. And there might be a few other fighters.
Mayweather earned the right to fight whoever he wanted. Not only was he still fighting the best, but he was considered pound for pound the best fighter in the world. He had no losses. He had no losses to avenge. Unlike Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez has 2 losses on his record. He hasn't avenged either one of those losses. How does he have the right to fight whoever he wants if he hasn't even avenged his loss to Bivol? Now you with
Well, I understand Dante's Boxing Nation what you're trying to state, but the thing is this: Canelo Alvarez is not a natural light heavyweight fighter, and on top of that, he is the cash cow, and you don't seem to have this same energy with Gervonta Tank Davis. So at the end of the day, once again, Canelo Alvarez does have the right to fight whoever he wants to, but at the same time, Canelo Alvarez also has a duty to boxing. And he also has a duty to himself overall to fight his mandatories and fight the guys that people are calling to see. And, you can pull that card about, I can fight whoever I want to because I've proven myself. Listen, at the end of the day, when you're a champion in boxing, and on top of that, you have belts, especially you're unified within a weight division, there's only so many times that you can really pull that card until people are going to finally see what's really going on. Now, am I saying that Canelo Alvarez is doing that? Not necessarily, but once again, he is going to have to eventually at least try to fight David Benavidez if Benavidez remains in a mandatory spot. So we'll see.
think that if he's not going to avenge that loss to Bivol, he would try to find a way to make up for that loss by taking on another monster like David Benavidez. Because if he were to beat David Benavidez, that would make people forget at least a little bit about the Bivol fight. I mean, at the end of the day, any boxer can fight whoever they want. That's what they all do. They're all doing that right now.
Well, not necessarily. Not every boxer can really fight whoever they want to. But Canelo Alvarez and Floyd, once you get to their level as the face of boxing, you pretty much can fight whoever you want to. But I think that Canelo Alvarez, I think that he does overall want to make this fight a little bit bigger. I think that, he wants to probably fight Jaime Munguia and then Jamal Charlo next. To be honest with you, I wouldn't really mind those fights happening next. But there's only so much that you're really going to be able to stretch out this David Benavidez fight. And that's not me stating, once again, that possibly that Benavidez was not at fault for this fight not happening either. Because I heard certain things about, the Benavidez camp that to me really didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like apparently how you got the Alexander Gvozdyk fight, but it's been proven that Gvozdyk, that he's the manager overall, the manager is Eddie Reynoso. So it's interesting that apparently you didn't hear from Canelo's side or his team or his manager whatsoever, but you got the Alexander Gvozdyk fight made. And now maybe they just made that fight through the PBC, maybe they just made that fight through that of Al Heyman. Maybe it was just purely Al Heyman, I'm not sure. But to me, that's not making a whole lot of sense.
Teofimo Lopez fights whoever he wants to fight. He doesn't want to fight Devin Haney. He doesn't want to fight Gervonta Tank Davis. He doesn't want to fight Terrence Crawford.
I would need to see if Teofimo Lopez really doesn't want to fight Gervonta Tank Davis. Let's stop talking about Gervonta Tank Davis in terms of big fights until he actually takes one. Because there's no offense against Gervonta Tank Davis, but dude, that guy has literally been in 0 big fights in his career. And I'm sorry, but I don't count the Ryan Garcia fight as a truly big fight. When you say big fight in terms of money making and a cash, grab, yeah, that's a great fight. And I think that it was a great fight to happen because Ryan Garcia was a relative threat. But at the end of the day, Ryan Garcia is not the purest boxer in the world. He's not the highest IQ level fighter. We all know that. Gervonta Tank Davis, to this day, overall, as Wilder would say, to this day, when it comes down to it, he has yet to fight a legitimate A-grade level fighter. At least one thing that I can say about Canelo, and this is in no way me whatsoever trying to give excuses to him not fighting Benavidez if he truly is avoiding the fight when it comes down to it. But at the end of the day, one thing I can say about Canelo is at least he's fought Lara, Jacobs, Cotto, Kovalev, Saunders, Smith, Caleb Plants, Gennady Triple G Golovkin, all these other guys, Jamel Charlo, and even Jaime Munguia next. It's not the main fight that I would want to see, but at least it's a fight overall that brings somewhat of reward when it comes down to it. It's like, who the fuck is Gervonta Tank Davis really getting in the ring with? I mean, do I really give a shit about Rolly Romero and Isaac Pitbull Cruz and Mario Barrios? It's like, that's why Gervonta Tank Davis, outside of Ryan Garcia, he's never done over 300,000 pay-per-view buys. Because no one gives a shit to see you fight these one-dimensional little Mexican or Dominican fighters. No one cares.
He doesn't want to fight Keyshawn Davis. He doesn't want to fight Shakur Stevenson. He's fighting whoever he wants to fight.
Gervonta Tank Davis is also fighting whoever he wants to fight, Dante's Boxing Nation. And you need to talk about Gervonta Tank Davis a little bit more as well. Because your main protected boy toy right now, Gervonta Tank Davis, is not fighting anybody. At least Canelo Alvarez, if he fights Jaime Munguia next, you can kind of understand why that fight makes sense. It's like, who is Gervonta Tank Davis going to fight next? I heard apparently he was debatably going to fight Frank Martin, and that's a very good fight. It's probably about as good, as the Jaime Munguia fight, maybe, give or take. But, when it comes down to it, it's like, Gervonta's going to have to get in the ring with somebody. It's like, dude, you're turning 30 years old this year, and you have like 30 fights on your resume. Who do you have?
And that's the exact same thing Canelo Alvarez is doing. I don't understand why Floyd Mayweather would compare Canelo to him of all people.
Because Canelo Alvarez and Floyd Mayweather Jr., whether you like to admit it or not, Dante, they have a lot more similarities than what you're willing to admit. They're both all-time great fighters. They're both exceptionally skilled fighters. And they both have great resumes and pretty much the best resumes of their generation. You can try to deny that and do as much damage control as what you want to. But that's the reason why many black fighters, black American fighters, from Gervonta Tank Davis to Devin Haney, to the Charlo brothers, to Floyd Mayweather Jr., that's why they've given somewhat of compliments to that of Floyd Mayweather Jr. These guys love to go on this shit about how Juan Manuel Marquez and, Chavez, and some of these other guys, or not really Chavez, but some of these other guys, how they love to, shit on Canelo Alvarez. But as soon as a fighter gives Canelo credit, then they have to try to discredit it in some sort of way. Especially if it's a black fighter. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, why are you trying to appease the Caucasians? Or why are you trying to appease the racists and all this other stuff? Was it really because they're trying to appease the racists, Dante? Or is that just because it's the truth? Or just because, that's what they truly think? Now, don't get me wrong. That's not me stating that sometimes that black fighters don't try to appease overall that of, the racial guys. Or, that overall, trying to appease that of, a certain demographic. But at the end of the day, is it really that? Or can we actually prove this, that Canelo Alvarez has a great resume and that he's debatably the greatest fighter of his generation? And when we take a look at it, at least for those of us that don't have an agenda, we can clearly see that Canelo Alvarez is debatably right there.
Well, I do understand it, actually. Floyd Mayweather is trying to cater to the race fans. He's trying to...
Here we go again. Here we go again. And I knew that Dante's Boxing Nation was going to do this. Why would Floyd Mayweather Jr. have any reason to cater to that of the race fans? Why does Floyd Mayweather Jr. overall, someone that was really hated throughout a lot of his career overall, and someone once again that is proven to be the greatest fighter of his generation, and whether people like him or hate him, he has the greatest pay-per-view draws of all time, and the greatest bottom line of all time, and the greatest marketability of all time. Why would he give a fuck about what other people think about him when he's been this successful? So once again, Dante is making a point. He's making a straw man argument that makes no goddamn sense because he knows that this looks bad for his argument. That Canelo Alvarez is just a hype job of a Mexican fighter and just a good Mexican fighter and been cherry picking throughout his whole entire career, which has been bullshit anyway. And I'm not saying that, once again, that Canelo has always made the greatest moves. That's not me stating that Canelo has not avoided any fighters in his career. But at the end of the day, dude, it's like, give the man his credit. The man overall has fought legitimately a dozen A-grade fighters in his career and beat them. Now, of course, he did lose to Bivol, and he did lose to that of Floyd Mayweather Jr. And I also thought that he lost the first Gennady Golovkin fight. But at the end of the day, he beat Gennady Golovkin in the rematch. He got that of Araceli Lara. He beat Danny Jacobs. He beat some other guys. It's like, dude, come on, give Canelo his credit. But that's never going to happen from Dante's Boxing Nation. Isn't it interesting that Canelo can fight all these guys, overall like that of, Golovkin and Danny Jacobs. And, there's always some bullshit excuse as to why Canelo Alvarez can't get credit for that fight. But Crawford fights a washed-up Kell Brook and a washed-up Amir Khan, and he gets credit for beating allegedly A-grade level fighters. And he beats Errol Spence Jr., the one definitive, for sure A-grade win in his career, along with Sean Porter, in my view. And now all of a sudden Dante and Aki TV say he's definitively top 5 to top 10 of all time. Like, are you serious?
Cater to old media. He thinks he's saying something that they want to hear. I'm telling you guys, with the influence of social media, it has completely changed the game.
No, Floyd Mayweather Jr. is not trying to appease to anybody. Floyd Mayweather Jr. knows that Canelo's in a very similar situation to him. And Floyd has stated a multitude of times that he believes that Canelo was avoiding David Benavidez anyway. So it's like, Floyd is not overall, once again, afraid of anybody. It's just that he knows that Canelo was in a very similar situation to what he was in. Floyd is in a very similar situation, where people were always criticizing him no matter what. And that's how you can tell, once again, who the true king of that particular sport is. because not only overall will a lot of people like you, but more than likely you're going to have potentially more haters as well as what you will lovers. It just is what it is.
This is the truth.
And that means that you're a true threat. Because when nobody hates you, that usually means overall, or when no one, when no one dislikes you, that usually means overall that you're not that big of a threat. Like when you hear these channels, none of them are really talking about Jaime Munguia that negatively. They talk about him negatively to a certain degree, but they don't give a fuck to talk bad about Jaime Munguia or someone like that because they know overall that he's not a huge threat. And right now, they're puffing up overall, smoke up Benavidez' ass. Right now, overall, they're talking positively about him. The only reason, once again, why they do that is like I've already stated. The LDBC and new media, especially new media, they don't really give credit to that of non-black fighters when it comes down to it, unless they believe that either A, they can use their name to tear down another fighter that they need to, like the Golovkin and Canelo situation, or like that's overall of the Josh Taylor, Teofimo Lopez situation or something like that, or Tio and Vasily Lomachenko, where they have to tear down a name like that to claim that they're ducking or that they're overrated or something like that. Or B, because they know that that fighter is potentially going to fight one of their top tier black fighters and they know that they can try to propose them as a top 5 pound for pound fighter. So when that black fighter ends up defeating them, they can say, wow, take a look at the talented fighter that they just beat. Right, but you notice that all the fighters, once again, that are looked at as the clear best or debatably the best of their weight classes, that are a threat around multiple weight classes, they never talk in a positive way. Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Canelo Alvarez, Naoya Inoue. They never usually give them as much credit or talk about them as positively as what they do some of their favorite fighters. There's a reason for that.
Guys, if social media was as big as it is today when Floyd Mayweather fought Oscar De La Hoya, all those antics he pulled, getting in Oscar De La Hoya's face and talking all of that he would have never did any of that in the social media world because he would be too worried about what the race fans will be saying about him. And if you don't believe me, go back.
So basically, once again, just like the same tactic that he pulled with Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney and other blacks, once again, that won't conform overall, to his ideologies. And once again, for those of you that are watching this video, and for those of you that are black boxing fans, or you believe that Dante's Boxing Nation is on your side, this is what he truly thinks about you. He's insulting your intelligence, and he's insulting overall a lot of these people's integrity and their courage. That's what he's really saying. He's basically saying that you're a coon, you're an Uncle Tom unless you agree with my ideology. A very similar tactic overall used by that of the liberals, and especially a lot of the liberal Caucasians. When it comes down to it, Dante's Boxing Nation is very brainwashed.
Watch the build up to the Pacquiao fight. You see, all of a sudden in that fight, Floyd Mayweather was a complete different person from the Oscar De La Hoya fight. He was quiet. He was humble. He didn't want to say.
Well, yeah, Floyd Mayweather Jr. overall didn't really need to promote that fight, though. But it's not like in every single fight that Floyd was just in the person's face. It is what it is. I mean, depending on the opponent, he did what he needed to. It is what it is.
Anything bad. He didn't want to talk shit at all when it came to the Pacquiao fight. That's because we were in the social media world. And Floyd was looking for...
Was it really that, or was it because overall that he really didn't need to promote that fight with Manny Pacquiao? That fight did 400 million pay-per-view buys. It is what it is. I don't think Floyd think that he needed to really promote that. I don't understand this social media argument where basically, and I'm not stating that Floyd got in everyone's face, but social media has been around for a very long time. When I first got on social media, it was probably at around 2014 or something like that, and back then, it was around even earlier. It was, you could debate that it's bigger now, of course, but social media has been around for a very long time, really for the past 20 years. So for Dante to make this point overall about, oh, he didn't do that because of the social media, to me, that just doesn't make any sense. Because when he fought Maidana, Cotto, Canelo, all those guys, social media was, it was about as big, maybe a bit smaller, but about as big then as what it is now.
Acceptance by the race fans and old media. He thought if he changed his personality and tried to be humble and respectful, the fans would accept him. But what Floyd Mayweather never understood is they never cared about your personality. They only cared about your complexion and the fact that you were the best.
Floyd understood that somewhat throughout his career, and Floyd has been known overall to state certain things to where he didn't give a shit about what certain people said. And I've always given Floyd Mayweather Jr. that amount of respect. Not me stating that the man is perfect by any means, but at the end of the day, Floyd Mayweather Jr., one thing I'll give him is that he has his own individual thought process. And Dante's Boxing Nation doesn't want you to have your own individual thought process. Just like I reviewed that, video not too long ago. What did he say? We all need to be on code, and for new media. We all need to be on code, just like old media is on code. What is he basically saying? We need to be as racist as what old media is. And if we're not, then we're not doing our job. That's what he's stating. That's why he gets so pissed off when it comes down to it overall. Once again, when it comes to this Mayweather, or people overall, when it comes to this situation. That's why he gets so mad at that, because it knows that it fucks up his argument.
And black boxer that's the best in the sport is the ultimate threat to the race fans. With that being,
I would agree with that, just like Canelo Alvarez and just like Vasily Lomachenko and just like, in a way, RDU. And that's why you try to tear them down just as much as what the racists on the other side tried to tear down Floyd Mayweather Jr. or Terrence Crawford or other black fighters, Andre Ward, etc., etc. You have the same exact mindset as them. You're not fooling anyone, at least someone with a brain cell.
said, now let's talk about what he said about Crawford and Benavidez fighting. So he says Terrence Crawford should fight David Benavidez, right? If he's going to move up to 168.
And Floyd knows that David Benavidez is way too goddamn big for that of Terrence Bud Crawford. But Floyd, at the end of the day, is basically saying, look, Terrence, if you're truly serious about that Canelo Alvarez fight, then you should be willing to fight some 168-pounders in that weight class. And let me also give Boxing Ego credit, because he stated something very similar. And I don't necessarily agree with everything that Ego nor Floyd says, but I agree with them. At the end of the day, it's like, Terrence, shut the fuck up and go take care of your division or take care of 154. Ain't nobody, including Canelo, trying to see that fight right now when you're 3 weight classes under Canelo Alvarez. Really 2, because Canelo's more of a middleweight. But at the end of the day, no one's trying to see you move up 3 weight classes, and then if you win, you're on top of the world. But then there's already a built-in excuse because you're way lighter than him. Like, no one cares. At least at the moment. It's like, I'm sorry, but it is what it is. And that's why Floyd is like, listen, dude, if you truly want to fight Canelo Alvarez that bad, go fight that Mexican monster that's been waiting for that fight for a few years.
He should fight David Benavidez because Canelo can fight whoever he wants to. This is what Floyd Mayweather is saying, right? But at the same time, he has a conversation with Ryan Garcia. He tells Ryan Garcia not to fight Devin Haney. And he made it very clear that he doesn't want Gervonta Tank Davis to fight Devin Haney. And just remember, guys,
Gervonta Tank Davis has been protected now pretty much for his whole entire career. And I like Gervonta Tank Davis as a fighter. I think that he's a phenomenal talent. He's a great fighter. But I can't really prove that he's a great fighter because it's like, dude, who have you fought?
when it comes to Devin Haney versus Gervonta Tank Davis.
And talking about Ryan Garcia, that dude, of course, seems like he's going off the rocker. Something very interesting recently that he stated, saying that apparently he was raped when he was 2 years old. Some people, of course, especially on the new media channel, they said that he's crying wolf. Listen, do I believe that Ryan Garcia, at least at some point in time in his life, probably was molested or raped in some way? Yeah, I do. 100%. Because when you take a look at a certain amount of what Hollywood is up to, or if you if you know sometimes what some of these athletes or musicians or some of these actors have to go through, molestation and especially overall rape overall, especially of younger kids when it comes down to especially younger boys, that's a part overall of what they do, especially in controlling certain people, especially in controlling certain high level people overall that they have, whether in the sports world, Hollywood world or actor world or musician world. It happens to a lot of them. And Ryan Garcia is not the only one to allege this. Mike Tyson ended up getting molested when he was younger. When it came down to it, there was a certain amount of other fighters and other athletes that also said that they were molested when they were younger. I thought that John Jones also stated that he was, and of course he's a UFC fighter, but I can't really remember about that. But do I believe that more than likely he probably was molested or raped at some point in time? More than likely.
Floyd Mayweather is the same person that said there are too many belts in the sport of boxing. Now, you would think that when Devin Haney had all 4 belts at 135 and Gervonta had some fake regular WBA belt, after what Floyd said, you would think that he would be one of the main people pushing for Gervonta and Devin Haney to fight. But that's not the case at all. I mean, Floyd Mayweather literally told Ryan Garcia to take the Rolly Romero fight because the Devin Haney fight is too dangerous of a fight. This is what Floyd Mayweather told Ryan Garcia.
Well, I think that Floyd Mayweather Jr. is coming from the perspective that he's actually trying to do what's best for his fighters. And to be honest with you, I can't really get too mad at him for that. I think that it's an admirable thing to do because I think that he's trying to basically kind of create the same blueprint that he did, which is save your money. Because these fans at the end of the day don't really give a fuck about you. And no matter what injuries or what losses you sustain, they're not going to pay your bills. So at the end of the day, fuck what they say. And at the end of the day, do whatever you have to do. Of course, you're going to have to take the big fights, but that can come a little bit later on. I don't really mind that for Ryan Garcia at the moment because he needs a little bit more building in his career. But the thing is about someone like Gervonta Tank Davis or Canelo, is that they're champions. They're looked at as guys that need to take on a big fight. So they're going to have to continue taking on big fights. Or Canelo is at least going to have to continue taking on big fights. Gervonta has to take on a big fight, period.
But then he says Crawford should move up to 168 after David Benavidez just moved up to 175, and they should fight. Instead of Floyd Mayweather putting pressure on Canelo Alvarez, which the whole boxing world is doing right now. It's amazing to me that Floyd Mayweather, he beat Canelo, and yet he comes off as being afraid of dealing with the backlash from the racist Canelo.
He's not afraid of Canelo Alvarez, nor is he afraid of the racist fans, Dante. Floyd Mayweather Jr. has stated a bunch of statements. Once again, Dante always tries to come out with this point because he knows that when a black fighter says this about one of the fighters that he's trying to tear down, that it majorly fucks up his narrative. So every single time that something like this happens, when they compliment or are on the side of a non-black fighter, Dante always has to try to sit here and tell you that, he's a part of the hive mindset, he's a part of the race fans, blah, blah, blah. All sort of bullshit, when really it's just Dante being a moron. It just is what it is.
Hello, Alvarez fans. By saying he could fight whoever he wants. But Crawford has to fight David Benavidez. Crawford is...
Well, once again, Mr. Dante's Boxing Nation, at the end of the day, and I think that Ego covered this point a little bit better, but that video was a little bit too long for me to review. But at the end of the day, Floyd Mayweather Jr. is right. At the end of the day, if you're going to get in the way of the potentiality of Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez, then, then go ahead and fight Benavidez if you want that mandatory position that badly. The reason why Floyd is stating that is because he's like, listen, dude, you're full of shit. At the end of the day, you're calling out Canelo Alvarez. You know damn well that Canelo Alvarez probably would have no interest in that fight. You have other business to attend to. You have Duran Butenis. You have Tim Tszyu at the 154-pound weight division. You have Jamel Charlo. You have other shit to do. And Benavidez and Canelo are in the way of a big money fight. And you're trying to potentially fuck up both of their money when it comes down to it. And on top of that, you say that you want that fight that bad. Well, then prove it. Go fight David Benavidez. And if you're not, then shut the fuck up and move on. So I agree with Floyd Mayweather Jr. there.
Considered pound for pound the best fighter in the world right now. Canelo is not considered the best fighter in the world. So if anyone...
Well, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Canelo Alvarez is considered debatably as the best fighter in the world. Debatably, But Terrence Bud Crawford right now, in my view, probably would hold that title. You also could potentially give it to Inoue or Usyk. Canelo was up there as well. And Fury has kind of been in and outside of that conversation for me, depending on his performance. But, of course, after his most recent sloppy performance over Francis Ngannou, it's very hard, of course, to put that title with him.
Should be
until he proves otherwise.
Well, to fight whoever they want. Floyd should be saying this about Crawford because he's 36 years old, kind of like how Floyd Mayweather was 36 when he fought Canelo.
Right, but you know what that's Floyd basically stating, Mr. Dante's Boxing Nation, that Terrence Bud Crawford has not really put in the work in his career like what a Canelo Alvarez has done. Because Floyd, I think, takes a look at Canelo and Crawford, and I think that he sees a little bit of, himself in both of those fighters. But I think that he takes a look at Canelo in terms of the face of boxing and in terms of putting work in his career, and I think he sees a little bit more of himself in that of Canelo, at least when you talk about those categories. Now, in terms of the similarity of styles and maybe the all-around skills, Floyd might believe that Terrence is even better than Canelo. He might, I'm not quite sure. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, Floyd realizes that Canelo has put in a lot of work, that he's the one that creates a lot of paychecks, and Crawford overall just does not bring that same amount of attention. It is what it is. I understand overall what, Dante is trying to get at, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, Canelo has put in more work than that of Terrence Bud Crawford. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that that gives him the right to duck or avoid Benavidez if he's going to do that. But at the end of the day, I understand where Floyd is coming from. And it's also very interesting because I don't hear any any criticism for Dante overall for Crawford versus that of Jaron Boots Ennis. Where is the criticism overall for Terence Crawford not fighting Jaron Boots Ennis, who is pretty much the biggest threat that he could potentially fight? We're not going to hear that. Now, in my view, I don't mind Terence Bud Crawford not fighting Jaron Boots Ennis because it's a very dangerous fight, and on top of that, probably wouldn't be the biggest payday at the current moment in time. And on top of that, Crawford could do great things at the 154-pound weight division. So in my view, that's a fight that maybe you'd take later on, if ever. But at the end of the day, once again, where's the criticism for Dante overall when it comes, to Terence Bud Crawford and the Jaron Boots Ennis situation? Then all of a sudden, oh, Terence can fight whoever he wants to. Isn't that interesting?
Right? He's already the best fighter in the world. You're supposed to be saying this about Crawford, not Canelo. Canelo is only 33 years old, and he has yet.
Canelo was 33 years old, but he's basically 36 or 37 years old. Just because you're a certain age in a particular sport doesn't mean that you're really that age. Canelo Alvarez started boxing professionally, I believe, at the age of 15 years old. Canelo is pretty much a 36 to 37-year-old man right now, and you've been able to tell within the past few years he is aging as a fighter. It is what it is, and Canelo can admit that whether he wants to or not. Canelo is aging as a fighter, and I think even he's starting to realize it a little bit, and I think that's why he's, if he takes this Benavidez fight, he's going to get a massive payday. It is what it is.
To get a big win with no controversy against someone his own size or bigger. Man,
And this is the debate that Dante's Boxing Nation keeps trying to bring up when it comes down to it, that Canelo Alvarez, that he can't be on the same level as some of these other guys or an all-time great fighter because he's got no wins without any controversy. This is the same bullshit excuse that he keeps using with both Manny Pacquiao and Canelo Alvarez. This is the same bullshit that he keeps bringing up. All right, listen, dude, at the end, but once again, you notice that he never uses that conversation with Andre Ward. Andre Ward, in both Sergey Kovalev fights, many people would say that there was controversy, especially in the first one, because many people, including myself, thought that Sergey just pulled that fight out. But no, Andre gets full-on credit for that fight. And then in the second one, in my personal view, I mean, Andre was winning the fight, but, those punches, in my view, did stray a little bit low, at least for my taste. But, Sergey, of course, was a little bit weak to the body, and that's a part of the reason of why Andre Ward ended up winning that fight. You notice overall when it comes to Sugar Ray Leonard, having controversy with Tommy Hearns, losing to Roberto Duran, but no, Sugar Ray Leonard is up there with the 10 greatest fighters of all time, when it comes down to, so how come Canelo Alvarez overall, that he's not compared overall in similar standards? We all know why that is.
Can't wait to do another interview with Floyd Mayweather because we're going to have some serious questions, some real questions, and I ain't talking.
Yeah, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. is going to make your ass look dumb.
About no disrespectful questions, just real ones. Not these bubblegum Mickey Mouse questions that you guys hear these other reporters asking. We asking new media questions.
Unless it comes to a fighter that you really like Gervonta Tank Davis, right? See, now Floyd is kind of pissed off Dante's Boxing Nation and new media a little bit because he wasn't supposed to say that. But the thing is that Dante doesn't understand is that these black fighters, they don't give a fuck about the narratives that you're trying to push. Now, they might agree overall with some of the shit that you're stating, but they don't really follow new media like that. They don't really fuck with them overall to that degree in terms of overall going into the hive mind and staying on code. They don't care about that shit. They're their own individual men and fighters and thinkers. They don't care overall about staying on code. They don't give a shit about that. Now, I'm sure some fighters might overall, but, when it comes to guys like Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, some other guys like that, they're not that weak-minded. And especially Floyd Mayweather Jr., someone that has pretty much created himself, along with Al Heyman, of course, helping him, but, and of course his uncles and his father. But at the end of the day, pretty much being a great individual success, especially as a fighter and also as a businessman. Floyd overall don't give a shit what you think about him. He don't fucking care.
Questions that real fans want answers to. I'll wrap this up by saying this. As bold as Terence Crawford is, he probably would have fought David Benavidez if he didn't move up to one.
Then go up to fight David Benavidez then. If you really want to fight David Benavidez that bad, go fight, or Canelo that bad. Go fight Tim Tszyu at 154. And then David Benavidez, I'm sure, will be readily available for you at 168. All right? Go up and fight David Benavidez.
175, because I believe there's a very good chance if David moves up to 175 and Canelo still doesn't want to fight him, he's most likely going to stay at 175. You got to understand the fact that he moved to 170.
He very well could, and then we're going to see overall how truly great David Benavidez actually is. And once again, the LDBC and the media, they're really propping up David Benavidez right now and stating that, oh, he's this, and that when it comes down to it, you know. But you notice that David Benavidez will not appear on any of these guys' top 10 pound for pound list. That's what you notice. And on top of that, they don't think that David Benavidez is truly going to get past the elites of 175. They don't think that he's actually going to beat Bivol or Benavidez at their best. And I don't think that he will either, to be quite honest with you. That's the reason why they love to puff up this much smoke of David Benavidez. And even if he gets past those guys and unifies the light heavyweight division, they're just going to state overall that he can't be that great because go unify cruiserweight and then go up, you know, and fight at heavyweight. And he can't be as great as some of these other guys because look at what Roy Jones Jr. did at heavyweight and look at all these other guys. And to somewhat, that's a valid point. But that's all they're going to state. You know, I already know what their plans are. They can't fool me. That's the reason overall, once again, why they're propping up David Benavidez. That's all they're going to say if David Benavidez ends up being successful at the 175-pound weight division. Well, if you're truly that great, go unify cruiserweight. Go unify the heavyweight division. Go fight those guys. You know, that's all they're going to state. They're using David Benavidez and Team Benavidez right now as a pawn and for views, but as soon as he's a threat, they're going to tear him down.
That's already making Canelo Alvarez feel more comfortable to continue ducking him. He's like, man, thank God, my problem done went away. He done moved to 175.
Which begs the question once again, why the hell did David Benavidez move to 175? And apparently from what I hear, he did not activate his mandatory status, even though he's been a mandatory. So what the hell is going on here? Once again, why would you go to 175? Now, maybe Canelo kind of told him behind the scenes, or Team Canelo said, listen, we're trying to build up this fight so we can make great money for both of us. You know, so let's try to push this off maybe for another year. You could potentially beat one of our fighters, Alexander Gvozdyk, or you can get in a fight with him. It'll put you in a mandatory position for 175. Maybe overall you can do something there. If you can beat Dimitri Bivol, which was a former problem for me, then that fight is confirmed. Then we'll do it, and it's going to make it look better on me. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Way, this is mission accomplished for the WBC because the WBC was the one that offered.
And let me tell you what, Benavidez apparently held his own to Dimitri Bivol, but Benavidez, you better be fucking careful against that boy Dimitri Bivol. Those Russians, Benavidez and Dimitri Bivol, when those two boys are at their best, those dudes don't play. Dimitri Bivol has great power, he has great hand speed, he has great foot movement and great foot speed. Those Russians, boy, they don't play.
David Benavidez a number one contender spot at the light heavyweight division to be in position to fight the winner of Bivol and Beterbiev, which goes against the WBC rules, by the way. According to the rules, David Benavidez cannot be in position to fight for a world title as a mandatory contender. But of course, the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, he did all of this to protect Canelo Alvarez. This is very reminiscent of when HBO was protecting Gennady Golovkin from Andre Ward. They presented an offer to Andre Ward asking him to move up in weight to fight Sergey Kovalev to get him off of Golovkin's back, and it worked.
Well, at the end of the day, Andre Ward really should have been fighting that of Sergey Kovalev anyway, because Andre Ward is a guy that could fit easily at the light heavyweight division. Gennady Golovkin is a natural 160-pounder. I would have not minded the Ward versus Golovkin fight, but at the end of the day, the Kovalev versus Golovkin fight was the one that was supposed to happen, or the Kovalev versus Ward fight was the one that was really supposed to happen. And of course, we got to see two great fights, or at least one.
Offered Andre Ward a lucrative 3-fight deal at light heavyweight to fight Sergey Kovalev. He would end up fighting Sergey Kovalev in the third fight. So the two biggest fights in the sport of boxing, Gervonta versus Devin Haney, and Canelo versus David Benavidez. Floyd Mayweather, he doesn't want to see either one of those fights. And once again,
I don't think it's that Floyd doesn't want to see either one of those fights. I just think it's that he wants them to build their money as much as possible. Because people like Dante, they don't give a shit how these fighters end up. especially overall if they look like Canelo Alvarez. And if they're on the old media side, they don't care how these black fighters overall end up, at the end of their life, or overall after their career. They don't care. So Floyd's, stance is basically make as much money as you can when you can. And I don't really have a problem with that, but to a certain degree, you are going to have to fight decent opponents. But Canelo has fought a great amount of opponents throughout his career.
When it comes to Canelo, he says Canelo, he's earned the right to fight whoever he wants. But what about Gervonta Tank Davis? Because surely he can't say Gervonta has earned the right to fight whoever he wants. And Floyd knows without a doubt.
Right, but the difference between Canelo Alvarez and Gervonta Tank Davis, Dante, is that Canelo Alvarez actually has a resume. You can try to pull this bullshit all you want to and pull the wool over people's eyes and try to lie and state that Canelo is fighting bums and all sort of stuff. That's not me stating that all the fighters within the past couple of years, that they've all been winners. I don't think that Rocky Fielding was elite. I don't think that Avni Yildirim was elite. I don't think that John Ryder was elite. But at the end of the day, you're also talking about Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders. You're talking about that overall of, what was his name, Jermell Charlo, Caleb Plant. And all those guys at one point in time were looked at as A-grade level fighters. And they were A-grade level fighters when Canelo defeated them. So let's stop the bullshit.
Gervonta Tank Davis versus Devin Haney is arguably the biggest fight in the sport of boxing today. Once again,
it's up there. Right now, I would say that it's probably Canelo versus Benavidez, but I think that that's also the reason, why they're waiting a little bit longer for this fight. I think that they're going to wait possibly for another year, and Canelo's going to get a lot of criticism for it, but at the end of the day, Canelo will have to deal with that, and somewhat of it is going to have to be somewhat warranted. But if I had to guess, they might potentially build up that fight if Benavidez lasts long enough overall, to really get that Canelo Alvarez fight. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised at all, once again, if Canelo Alvarez's team said, listen, if you really want this fight with us, get your mandatory position. You can fight one of our fighters, Alexander Vosdik. We'll see overall how good you actually are. And then once you get in that mandatory position, you can fight the winner of Better Beev overall versus that of Bivol. And then if I end up beating you, then I can get the credit. And then a lot of people will kind of forget my loss to that of Dimitri Bivol. I think overall that's, potentially that could happen, but we'll see.
Either that fight or the Canelo-David Benavidez fight. It's so unfortunate to see someone like Floyd Mayweather catering to race fans and old media with all of his talking points because he is the biggest boxer ever.
He's not catering to race fans or anything like that, Dante. It's just that you're an idiot, and also, once again, you're very insecure overall with your place in the world and also with your place and black fighters' place in boxing, and you have your own propaganda and you have your own agenda. It is what it is. This is why I like to comment on Dante and these guys every once in a while, or, a lot, because, a lot of people come in my comment section, they're like, oh, you're just hating, you're just jealous, all sort of stuff. Dante has a clear agenda afoot. And it's no offense, but if you can't see that, it's probably more than likely because you're a part of the victimization pro-black cult mentality of America. It just is what it is, and new media. It just is what it is. People can like that. I really cannot like that. I really don't give a shit. It is what it is.
Massive influence on the boxing world. Just imagine if he was speaking the whole truth unapologetically and fighting for the justice that these fighters deserve. Man,
Are you really fighting for the justice that these fighters deserve, Dante? Or are you pretty much just a politician on a different side? Let's stop the shit.
Would change overnight if someone with Floyd Mayweather's platform would just do something like that. Speak the whole truth. Just food for thought. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it. I just thought that I would commentate on that. We all know that Dante's full of shit like regular. But it is what it is. Anyways, that's pretty much about it. I just thought that conversation was very particularly interesting. But that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see where this goes. But I would not be surprised at all if Canelo, if he says that, listen, I want to fight that Jaime Munguia next, and then Jermall Charlo in September. And then we'll make the David Benavidez fight next year if overall he can do good at the light heavyweight division. I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. We'll see overall what ends up happening with this. But I'm very personally excited to see who both Canelo and David Benavidez fight next. It's going to be interesting, but we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later.